Debt has always been part of civilization. From ancient empires to modern nation-states, borrowing allowed societies to fight wars, build infrastructure, and survive disasters. Debt itself is not the problem. The problem begins when debt stops being a temporary solution and becomes a permanent condition. Today, nearly every major government in the world is operating inside what economists quietly call a debt trap. A situation where borrowing is no longer a choice, but a necessity, and where every attempt to fix the system makes it more fragile. To understand why governments may not be able to fix the next crisis, we need to understand how we got here. After World War II, global government debt was extremely high. In the United States, federal debt exceeded 120% of GDP. In Europe and Japan, the numbers were similar or worse. Yet debt did not trigger collapse. Why? Because growth was strong. Between 1950 and 1970, advanced economies experienced rapid productivity gains, population growth, and industrial expansion. According to historical data from the World Bank, real GDP growth in many developed countries averaged between 4 and 6% annually during this period. Debt shrank not because it was repaid, but because economies outgrew it. This created a powerful belief that governments could always grow their way out of debt. For decades, that belief held. But the conditions that made it possible no longer exist. Today, populations are aging. In many developed economies, fertility rates are well below replacement levels. According to United Nations demographic data, countries like Japan, Italy, and Germany are projected to see shrinking populations over the next several decades. Fewer workers means slower growth. At the same time, productivity gains have slowed. Despite technological progress, productivity growth in advanced economies has averaged closer to 1% annually since the early 2000s, according to OECD data. Slower growth changes everything. Because debt does not slow down. Government debt has grown faster than economic output for decades. According to International Monetary Fund estimates, global government debt surpassed 90% of world GDP after the pandemic, the highest level in peacetime history. In some advanced economies, debt exceeds 120 or even 150% of GDP. At these levels, debt behaves differently. Interest payments begin to consume a large share of government budgets. In the United States, for example, net interest costs have risen rapidly as rates increased, approaching levels comparable to major federal programs. This creates political pressure. Raise taxes and voters react. Cut spending and economies slow. Borrow more and debt grows faster. Every path carries risk. Central banks once provided an escape. By lowering interest rates and purchasing government bonds, they made debt manageable. From 2008 to 2020, near-zero interest rates allowed governments to borrow trillions at historically low costs. But this solution came with consequences. Low rates inflated asset prices, encouraged excessive risk-taking, reduced market discipline, and most importantly, they made economies dependent. When inflation surged after the pandemic, central banks were forced to raise rates. This revealed the trap. Higher rates fight inflation, but increase debt servicing costs. Lower rates protect governments, but risk inflation and currency weakness. There is no perfect balance. History shows that debt traps rarely end with clean solutions. They end through subtle mechanisms: inflation, financial repression, currency devaluation, or long periods of stagnation. Japan provides a clear example. Since the 1990s, Japan has carried one of the highest government debt levels in the world, exceeding 200% of GDP by some measures. Despite decades of stimulus, growth remained weak. The economy did not collapse, but it also never fully recovered. This outcome is often misunderstood. The danger of excessive debt is not sudden disaster. It is lost decades. Now consider the global scale. Unlike Japan, today's debt problem is synchronized. Multiple major economies are highly indebted at the same time. This limits external rescue options. In previous crises, capital could flow from healthier regions to weaker ones. Today, there are fewer safe havens. Artificial intelligence is often presented as a solution, and AI will likely boost productivity. But history shows that technological revolutions take time to translate into broad economic growth. Electricity, computers, and the internet all required decades before transforming productivity at scale. Debt pressures operate on a much shorter timeline, Interest payments are due now. Markets demand confidence now. This creates a mismatch between future potential and present obligations. When the next crisis arrives, whether triggered by financial markets, geopolitics, or technology itself, governments will respond. They always do, but the tools will be weaker. Stimulus will be constrained by inflation fears. Monetary easing will face credibility limits. Debt expansion will raise long-term risks. This is the core of the debt trap. Not that governments will fail immediately, but that each intervention reduces future flexibility. The system becomes brittle, resilient on the surface, fragile underneath. History teaches us that economic systems rarely break all at once. They erode, slowly, quietly, until confidence shifts. And confidence, once lost, is difficult to regain. The debt trap is not about predicting collapse. It is about understanding limits. Limits to growth. Limits to policy. Limits to control. Governments built modern stability using debt. But stability built on borrowing cannot last forever. The next crisis will test not just economies, but the very tools used to protect them. And history suggests those tools may no longer be enough.